up, everybody? I've missed you. It's a snowy day in Colorado, and it's kind of nice, actually. I'm inside, I'm drinking tea, and I'm in a good mood, and I'll tell you why. Jasmine. The reason why is because I have a really fun guy on the horn right now. We're about to bring in Manley Feinberg. Cross your fingers that I get this right. Oh, there he is. Hold on. I think I messed. I want to try something else, Manley, though. Bring you. That'll work. Nice.
There we go.
Manley Feinberg. Hi.
What's up, Brandon?
I'm so glad you
How are
joined
you?
me. Your camera is looking great. You're so handsome. All right, so let me tell
It's
them a little bit about
a
you.
very expensive camera to make me handsome for a moment.
Oh, is that your? So if I got a pretty nice camera, it doesn't work for me. What the heck? I'm gonna add your last name to this real quick. Feinberg is spelled fine. Are you ERG?
Yeah, ERG. Feinberg. Yep.
Got it. Well, folks, I'm so glad for you to know Manley. Not only is he a very nice guy, and in my book, that goes a long way, but he's a master speaker. This guy, I've seen him in front of audiences, this huge corporate audience, and he stood up there telling his stories about climbing mountains, showing these incredible photos of him climbing mountains. He brings out a rock guitar. Yeah, he brings a rock guitar, which kind of made me jealous because I don't know how to do that, and I don't know how to climb a mountain. Not only, though, is he a very skilled speaker and a certified speaking professional, he is a veteran of Build-A-Bear, which I'm kind of eager to hear about because I've been in Build-A-Bear. I know all about it. I'm curious as to what you do and if you hate teddy bears now. But I think the sexiest part of you is the mountain climbing part. You have hung off these insane cliffs. You are one of those elite climbers that does things that most people would never consider do. Welcome to the show, Manley.
Thanks, Brad. It's like to be with you, brother. Happy Friday, everybody.
Yeah, it is really nice to have you. Let's get into mountain climbing. So I heard your story, and it's very impressive being in your audience because you get to talk about being a mountain climber and you show these insane pictures. And that was one thing. But then when I saw that picture or the movie Manley Free Solo, what's the name of that guy, that idiot?
Alex Honnold.
Alex, right? Okay, he's on El Cap, and they have those insanely cool cameras and crew on El Cap with him. And all I could think of was, Manley has been on that. Man, that's where Manley was. That's you, right?
Well, not he does it in a style without a rope. That's something I always use a rope. So his risk tolerance is way wider range than mine is. But I have been up on that wall that a portion of that wall that he shows in that documentary. That footage is amazing. So it's mind blowing, definitely.
See, I'm telling you, seeing that movie just changed everything what I thought about you, because you see the camera pointing down, and I know what you're going to say, like, oh, there's different routes and different sections of the wall. But for Muggles, it's a big freaking cliff. And you've been on
it's huge.
Down.
Yeah. Yeah, I've lived, it's not, it's all relative, right? So a lot of climbers don't get on something that big. But then I know a lot of climbers who have done way, way more impressive things than me and lived up there for days. But I spent like 15 or 18 or 20 days up there. Living on the wall and being in that environment. So it's visually, it's just as intense as what they show in the movie. Of course, I have a lot more equipment, so I feel a lot more secure. But I think mentally, it's definitely the game is more intense. The repercussions if he screws up are obviously death. But I wonder if just the way I bet he's less scared than I am. I'm not like constantly freaking out the whole time I'm up there. But anyway, it's a similar sense of presence and like there's focus, and I think he does that on a completely different level for sure. But visually, it definitely does capture. That is really what it looks like and what it feels like mentally for your brain to process it. It's pretty awesome, and I love that part of it actually. By the way, so that's just I think there must be a gene in there in my brain, my DNA or whatever that. How I respond to heights, and I bet it's genetic. I haven't looked it up. It's probably on my 23andMe.
Well, that's one of the. There's so many things I want to ask you because I think, Manley, one of the things that makes you a really good person and a reason you makes you a really good speaker is you are not a sort of braggy, look what I did kind of guy. But I don't mind telling you my goal today is to get you to brag a little bit because the rest of us just can't imagine. So I hear you saying like, oh, Alex climbed it without a rope, which makes him, by the way, both amazing and crazy. But for
Mhm.
a lot of people, my wife, Manley, is scared going up an escalator if there's not a wall right next to her. So
Yeah,
like
mine too.
the fact that you're on that wall hanging off with the safety ropes is still terrifying. And did you just say yes, you're afraid of escalators? Oh, your
What's
wife
that?
is afraid.
Yeah, my wife's afraid of heights as well, but she's climbed some pretty. She's not been on El Cap with me, but she's climbed some pretty tall rocks with a lot of, we call it exposure. The visual, the difference between the current visual field and the forward visual field and the furthest visual field creates what we call exposure in our brains. And just what's interesting about that is that there's certain climbs can feel very exposed but not be that tall, right? And then they're really long. I've done routes with my wife that are about as tall as El Cap, a shorter route that actually don't feel nearly as exposed because they're not as steep. The angle of the rock is lower. So bottom line is it's all about how your brain's processing that perceived visual threat or not. So for me, that feels really good. I really embrace it. I kind of literally lean into it, and the exposure of it I find exhilarating. But part of that's because I've learned how to operate in that environment in a safe way, so that and I know people think they're like, what do we mean safe? It's literally safer than driving a car. If you know what you're doing, if you're using the right equipment and you follow the rules, it's safer than driving. So it took me a long time to build up that confidence, right? And test the systems and get used to the equipment. But then it allows me to be up there and really enjoy it, actually, even though it's a lot of work. But
I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying safer than driving a car. No way.
yeah, it's true. And so you can ask a life insurance underwriter if you're not. That's where that data came from, by the way. Is life insurance industries, as you know, they have a lot of money on the line on understanding and really knowing risk that people expose themselves to. And so that's why I happened to pick Northwestern Mutual as my company by chance, because of one of the reasons I stumbled upon them is they were one of the few companies that actually understands the true risk of different types of climbing. Mm-hmm. So they had this massive, like 3-hour, almost like hour and a half interview, multiple pages of really detailed. You could tell they knew what they were doing. So exactly what kind of climbing do you do? Do you go to Nepal? If you go to Nepal, how high are you climbing and what mountain? What even almost a level of what route? Because rock, ice, snow, high altitude mountaineering, big wall climbing, sport climbing, bouldering, they all have a dramatically different risk profile. So it's anyway that I don't know how I got it. Yeah. So it really is. That's right. Because you're wondering about the risk. So really, those statistics came from studies from life insurance companies. When I say that, so bicycling actually is pretty risky too, but more for injury. But the death percentage is similar to climbing. Or anyway, so yeah,
it's just say death percentages. I think you just said death percentages.
Yeah.
Well, okay, all right. So I believe you, but definitely you understand that, in spite of what the actuarial scientists say, hanging off a cliff from a rope is not something the rest of us see as super comfortable.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
All right, so
I
here's
agree.
my challenge. I would love for you. I wonder if I asked you to summarize in a couple minutes that I think you were 2 weeks on El Cap, or you did an unusual thing. And here's the rules, Manley. You are a skilled speaker, and you tell some of this from your keynote. You have to be able to tell me that story without going in your material. Do you accept the challenge?
Which story?
It took you. You were on a specific route on El Cap with a partner, and it turned out it was harder than you thought, and you had to fix your calluses, and in the end, it was a surprise ending.
And so you want to hear that story?
Yeah, but with the provision that you are not allowed to go into your material.
Gotcha. So story with no point.
Right. Yes.
So that's like, I think you're talking about the last time I was on El Cap. It's been a while now. I did a big wall, by the way. There's two different ones I could talk about. Last May, I did a climb across the valley from El Capitan on a feature called the Leaning Tower. And it's just really, really steep. It's not all that tall. It's about 1,000 feet tall, but it's really, really overhanging. And so it's very, very, very physical. But I did it. The coolest thing is I did it with my son, Manley version 3, and he had just graduated from high school. So we took way longer than you usually take to get up that wall. We were on the wall for 4 days. We had what we call a party cruise. We took our time and slept an extra night at the base, slept an extra night at the top, and just really took our time and enjoyed it. Part of that is that physically, my physical condition I couldn't have gone a whole lot faster anyway. So that's part of it. A more recent story of climbing and what we call a big wall. That's where you live on the wall for days. And then the last time I lived on El Cap for days was in 2008. And a buddy of mine, his name's Rich Copeland, was a kind of a legendary local Yosemite climber at the time. And we spent 5 full days and nights on the wall. And we ended up getting about about halfway up the wall, but through the most difficult sections. So we actually completed the second ascent, all but one move. And my buddy takes a fall, which surprises a lot of people. They're like, well, what do you mean you fell? And we expect to fall, and we build systems so that when we fall, we're going to be okay. Right. And it's kind of, it's not really directly in my content material, but that is a direct application to life, right? That it's a different mindset when you're approaching it, like assuming I'm going to screw this up.
Right.
And then you preemptively build in whatever you need from a personal support or technology or equipment ahead of time. I think you go into things with a little different mindset, and you can be a little more uncomfortable because you've already looked at the worst case and you know what happens if you screw up. So he falls, breaks his ankle, really, really bad ankle break. And we self-rescued the next day, which is part of the lessons in the conversation. The story is that I didn't believe I could do this. And my buddy, he had an incredible amount of influence on me, and he was really good about, he just hit me straight up. He said, "You don't think you can do this, do you?" And that's also really relevant, right? I think a lot of times we are capable of stuff we don't see that we're capable of. And it was definitely his encouragement that got me to self-rescue us off the wall. Because as my buddy Rich said at the time, it would be bad style for us to call for a rescue. So there's this ethic in the climbing world where we get ourselves into predicaments, and our one of the unwritten rules is you need to be able to self-rescue, right? You shouldn't be going out there and putting yourself in a situation and then just think you're going to call on a rescue team to put their lives at risk to get you out of it. It's pretty frowned upon. But if you have a legitimate crap hit the fan, everybody's, there's no problem. Get the rescue. But generally, they actually will quiz you and hit you pretty hard. If you do call for rescue in Yosemite and they find out that you were ill-equipped or undertrained and you didn't have the right gear or whatever, then they'll fine you actually and make you pay for the rescue. So anyway, it's the right thing to do anyway. So yeah, we got off the wall safely the next day. And is that the story you were talking about, do you think?
Yeah. But so this gets me to the stuff I'm dying to ask you.
Okay.
So let's summarize. You're with a partner, 2 very experienced climbers. You're up a very difficult route. I get the impression that's a big part of it, is picking which route you want to do and why.
Yeah, and that's even the easiest route up El Capitan is very difficult, and it takes expert level logistics and knowing the equipment. But then there are the really, really difficult routes. Yeah, so there's a great variety of ways you can go.
Right.
And
right,
this was one of the harder ones.
And you've proven you got past the hard stuff, or some hard stuff, and then this guy falls, which is normal. He breaks his ankle, which is not normal.
Yeah, not normal.
And then you say we self-rescued, but that means you rescued him, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to humbly dodge that, but that's the truth. Yeah, I rescued us.
Right, and you were kind of pressured into it by this guy saying, hey, it's not cool to call for help, so let's not. You can do it. I just kind of want to say this, like, whiskey, tango, foxtrot. What? There's so many questions I don't understand, like why you wouldn't call so yeah, there's some pressure and maybe some money involved. Although I'm guessing you wouldn't. No,
we wouldn't have been. We know for sure that we would not have been fined. It would have been. So we wouldn't have had to pay anything. It really wasn't about the money. So
right. So, but yeah, you did. So I'm just so curious as to the why, because you proved you did it right. It has a good ending, but you're up there with another body that you have to get safely off of a cliff that you're hanging off, and you don't just get another athlete in there to say like maybe you could check my work.
Yeah. So here's a couple other factors that helped So we had a long conversation, like the whole rest of the day, that whole evening was like, what the hell are we going to do now? Right. So are we going to, because I was insistent, I was like, give me your cell phone. We're going to call for a rescue. This is crazy. And he kept encouraging me. He said, I've climbing with you for days here. I know you have the skill set to do it. The other big challenge, especially on a cliff that big and that steep, is finding your way down is not, especially from that high up, is really, really difficult. A lot of that is because the wall is like literally so overhanging that when you lower down, you're out in space and you're not touching the wall. So we had to kind of reverse climb the wall. So getting off of this particular wall was even more difficult than it normally would be. The crux with that is that you can rappel off the end of your rope or get to the end of your rope and be suspended in space and kind of stuck, which happened at one point during the descent. But I was really, really, my number one, with all this, when crap hits the fan, right, in life or on a climb, one of the most important things we can do is figure out what's the crux of this, right? What's the most difficult thing or the most dangerous thing potentially that we need to deal with and figure out. And let's get all that out on the table. And for me, my biggest fear was rappelling off the end of the rope. So I was very anxious about that, or to being stuck out in space and not being able to get to the anchor. And finding the anchor, by the way, the anchor is like a milestone, a spot where we stop on the wall and we pull the ropes down and reassess and reset and keep going. It's like a milestone or a rest stop. And so finding those is basically the way you find them is visually. You're trying to locate a little gray bolt, the size of like a nickel. Imagine a nickel pasted on the side of a piece of white and gray granite, right? It's literally chrome on granite. And so it's incredibly difficult to see it. And then you're out on the wall. But here's the secret weapon we had. We had a friend in the valley named Tom Evans, who's known he has this great website called lcapreports.com, a retired school teacher, and he used to take photos of people. Actually, the photo, which one? The one on this side of me back here is a photo that Tom took of me and Rich on that climb from the meadow. So we had him with a telescope that he could see where we were. And in addition to that, we had two other big advantages. One was the climber who had done that route originally, Dave Turner, was in the valley, and we had radio access to him. And we had radio access to a friend named Eric, who wrote the guidebook to Yosemite, to that El Capitan in particular, and knows it like the back of his hand. So they gave us visual support from the ground to kind of give us direction, which am I going the wrong way, or I need to veer towards my left or my right. So that helped a lot. That was a huge factor for me, not going into all that in the dark and blind and not knowing the way down at all. So we had some eyes on the ground helping us with direction when we needed it every few hours or whatever. So all that combined eventually convinced me that we could do it ourselves. The other thing is too, we always, in the back of my mind, it's like, hey, we can try to, I never really considered this, but now I think back, if we tried to start self-rescuing and then we got stuck, we could still call for a rescue, right? So it wasn't like all or nothing, but it was definitely the best style. I don't know, there's just a strong ethic in the climbing world to try to be self-reliant and get yourself out of whatever you put yourself into.
Okay, I admit that's sounding a little bit more reasonable as we go, and a little bit less just crazy ass dumb shit weird. But I just still think probably one of those people with the telescopes that you mentioned might have come down from the top and said, "Are you tired? You need some help? I brought you a snack." Probably another set of muscles would have been helpful.
Yeah, so it would have been easier for sure. Yeah, but I think we believed we could do it, and we knew that would be, I don't know if that rewarding was the word that came through the evaluation. It just felt like what I needed to do.
But that's interesting because what I'm hearing from you is one of the biggest drivers is the code, right? And it's sort of I'm guessing it's a little bit of a testosterone fueled. No, we do. It's the way it works. We just do it yourself, as opposed to like sitting down and doing the calculus and saying what's available and what's open to me.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's interesting. It's like I don't know if maybe there's probably a lot more people watching this that have done a race or a run or a jog or something, and even informal, say you did a 5K run at some point in your life, and I mean, there's always an opportunity to like cut a corner, right? So you could cheat a little bit, or I don't know. There's things you could do in some pursuit in life. I mean, in work as well, right? We make these choices on basically whatever our moral, ethical standard is. Like, this is how I'm going to operate. And I think it's part of that. For me, it's part of that. It's like, what's the, even, so nobody's going to see, like, here's another funny thing. It's like, if we're free, here's a grossly misunderstood phrase in climbing, free climbing, right? When people hear the phrase free climbing, they think you mean no rope, but it actually doesn't mean that. Free solo means no rope, right? So the name of the movie. Free climbing means you're freely moving up the rock under your own power. And you're still using equipment though. So if you fall under the rope. But the ethic is, when you're climbing up the wall, you only grab natural features in the wall, and you don't hang on like a man-made, like your equipment. You can't. You put a piece of equipment in, and if you pull on it or hang on it, you can't call that a free climb. You're supposed to tell people, I aided myself. I grabbed this piece of gear. I didn't free climb, and nobody's going to see that. That's all up to you. That's just kind of an honesty code, like you said. So it's just deciding. It's a personal matter of integrity, I guess. Because I've always been really, really obsessed about, even in storytelling. This is funny. We talk about our friends in the speaking business. I've had some friends encourage me to, alter my story some, or enhance them, or change names of people. I just am really big on telling the truth. And then some friends like, well, you don't have to exaggerate because your stories are so crazy anyway. So, but I think it's really important I think that starts to add up if there's too much gets awry and you start blowing the story up and exaggerating it. I think keeping it as close to truth as possible is really important. But I think for me, that obsession comes from the climbing ethic of exactly what happened up there and what did you do, and don't lie. So yeah, definitely the code is a big deal.
When you're rescuing Rich, your partner, he's got 3 limbs that are working. How much help is he, or is he just dead weight that you're lowering?
That's a really good question. He was a pretty good amount of help, more than you'd think, because he was so strong. He's really stout, blue collar cat, just really tough. The guy could just go for days and not stop. So he was actually able to. There's little moments where he was. One other crux and difficulty of this situation was we had to get him down, myself, of course, and all of our equipment that we took up there. We didn't have to, but it's expensive stuff, so we wanted to bring it down with us. And to do that, you have to put pulley systems in place. It gets kind of complicated at times logistically to be able to move this equipment around up there and lower it. You're kind of doing vertical freight moving, right? So you have a couple hundred pounds of equipment. So you're using pulleys. So sometimes stuff, it just helps a little bit to have some muscle to pick things up or move things so it can get unstuck. And he was able to do all that. And he, just being such a tough guy, he never complained. And he was pretty, he helped quite a bit. I think it made a big difference. And so he wasn't completely incapacitated by any means. And it was encouraging him, a lot of moral support too. So that's funny, actually, in the original conversation after he had his accident, I said, well, you're not going to be any help. Your freaking ankle's broken. And he said, I'll be moral support. so okay, thanks, Rich. But he was an amazing guy. He was just a beautiful personality and really, really lit you up. So he was good at that.
So how long, so it sounds like he broke his ankle and then you spent the night and then you started down. How long did it take to get down?
It took the entire day. The next day, we started at crack of dawn, and we hit the base it was after dark. I don't remember what time, 9 or 10 p.m. So probably 10. It took more than 12 hours to get down, which is still pretty, considering we're moving all the equipment. The thing is too, the other challenge logistically is I had to basically down climb a section of climbing, establish an anchor. Then I had to go back up on ascenders up the rope, climb back up to him, get the equipment together and get him together, and then lower all of us back down to the next anchor system. So it was, it's pretty tricky in that sense, and a lot more work. It's like four times the amount of work if you're trying to do it you're all on your own.
Right. So he's
just come
coming down, but you're going like this. You went up and down the whole way down.
Going down, back up, and back down again. Yeah. So 4 trips, versus normally you just go one, right? You would just go down.
Beast.
No, I wasn't. Maybe that day I was, right? So I don't feel like it now. So I was in really good shape physically, and I don't know. I think when we're put in our backs are against the wall. I think people are probably realizing this year. A lot of things are not going well, but I think maybe we can't see it right now because we're in it still so much. But I hope when people look back on this year, they find at least a few moments, and I think that's a good little thing. I just came up with this, so don't accuse me of trying to put content in our conversation. What have we reflected on the year? And so what are a couple of things that surprised me that I did, that I'm happy about, I'm proud of, or, that I was courageous about, to celebrate. And it's got to be relevant and adjusted for the time, right? So I think just getting through this year. And if you're still here, that's a success. It's a big deal. So context and looking back on it. Anyway, I just wonder if that would be helpful for people to, I need to do that. But my point is that when our back's on the wall, we rise to the occasion, I think, more often than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, you made it. Let me talk about this stuff. So I asked you this, but I wanted to follow up. In your keynote, one of the photos you show, and again, during your keynote, you have these amazing photos, was it looked like a blanket or a tarp, and it was very neatly laid out, like a bunch of these things,
Oh, yeah.
and a bunch of those things, and then here's different ropes and whatever. And I didn't know what they were, but I did think, holy cow, that's a lot of metal that you apparently have to carry up the mountain. And then you said the most intriguing question ever, Manley. You said, and you didn't even ask me about the poop sack, only you didn't use the word poop. So you know what I want to know, right?
How's that go down?
How do you take care of business when you're on the side of a mountain?
It's not fun. So every job has some dirty work, right? So I should get dirty jobs guy on an episode, right? So number one's easy. You go pee into the air, right? Or whatever is appropriate. If there's people nearby, you kind of pee on something that's going to evaporate on the rock. So that's pretty simple. Number two is not fun. So, because really what you have to do is, we used to go in a brown paper bag and then throw it off the cliff. And when I first started big wall climbing, and then you would yell "shit bag." So pardon my French, but that's a direct quote. That's literally was the code. Like, you do it in the brown paper bag, roll it up like a grocery bag, and then yell the warning and toss it. And in 1995, the end of May, I think it was June 1st in 1995. And I know this date because I got my first 3 big wall climbs in May of that year. And there wasn't, this new regulation wasn't in place yet. But after June 1st, I think it was in 95, you had to haul it with you and take it to the top, all the way back down, and dispose of it properly. So what we do now is we usually have some kind of big PVC sealable tube or a big bucket that can seal, and then use big Ziploc bags of kitty litter. And there's some stuff you can get, like powder. I think it's something like that they have in the porta potties. You can sprinkle in there too to help contain things. But it's really still very, 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 you can't get rid of the smell. It's just nasty. It's nasty, man. It's not fun. And then on top of that, if you're if you're shy about that and you need to be alone in an insulated room, then it's not going to work, because you maybe not be shoulder to shoulder with the person. Sometimes you are. You might be able to get down below the porta ledge where you sleep. And that's what we would do, is actually we would lower down about 15 feet or so. And then you're hanging in your harness, which is very uncomfortable. And then try and get your drawers down, make sure that everything's clear. Hit the bag, seal things up, put them back in their container, and make sure things are clean. Use hand sanitizer, and make sure things are sanitary as possible. So it's not fun. It's not fun. Not for me anyway. But it's a valid question. It's funny. I used to talk about years ago when I was speaking, but I didn't really know what I was doing way back in the early days. 20 years ago when I talked about these things. That was something I always talked about. And when I started looking into being a full-time professional, I was actually already launching my career at the end of my Build-A-Bear career. A friend of mine at Build-A-Bear, she's like, I don't want to hear about that. And she said, I bet other women in the audience don't want to hear about how you go to the bathroom either. It's like, fair. So some really outspoken women will ask me, but for the most part, I know I'm generalizing. I'll probably get, some kind of social media backlash, but generally men are like kind of want to hear about it, like any other bathroom humor thing. And then most gals I talk to are like, don't even ask, right? So some do.
I'm living with 3 women, and my wife and 2 daughters, and I will ask them at dinner if they want to know about the shits. What did you call it? Shit sack?
Yeah, sure. Shit bag is what we used to call it.
Shit bag. So this is like a Kroger bag that you're lobbing down?
Used to. Yeah, we haven't done that in over, what is it now, 15 years. So
the good old days.
25 years. So 95 was the last time I was able to toss the bag. So the idea was that, if you throw it and it decomposes, and I guess at one time that was probably okay because there weren't a lot of people doing it, but now so many people. Have you ever missed the bag?
Thank you, Pete.
Thank God. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I have not, thank goodness, but I'm sure there's lots of stories. So but so 25 years we've been packing to the top and out, as you should do, leave no trace.
Well, that is a new phrase. I'm packing. So let's talk about that stuff. You have, so I get it. You're free climbing, meaning so you're bringing your body up without support, just safety gear.
Right.
But I'm assuming that stuff you're carrying with you, like the shit sack and all the tent and whatever, those are going up with mechanics.
Yes, exactly. So you basically set up the simplest version is a one-to-one pulley system. So you basically would have, a round pulley, this pretty low friction at the top, and you basically it's a little more complicated because you're setting up uh, two anchor systems. Essentially, you have an anchor system set up that can the idea is that you set up one anchor system that completely keeps the team safe, and no matter what that's going to hold you on the wall. And then we set up a separate anchor system and connect the two, ideally, so that you have a completely independent system that will also hold all the equipment and can hold everybody, right? So that you're putting a lot of load and impact on it. Because when you're hauling on the pulley, when you're pulling against it, and you use these little teeth on the rope to hold it in place, all that system it works really well. But if you screw that up, you could kill yourself. So it's really simple stuff. Like the mechanics of it are pretty simple, but so it's almost, in a way, in a sense, it is sort of like driving in that way. It's like, it's not hard. Driving's not hard to do. It's just, but there's a lot of little things you have to do right consistently, or you can screw it up. So yeah, it's not really that technically that hard.
And that
But you just need to be thorough on it.
the second system for the gear, why don't you just run like an El Cap? I don't know how you get to the top, but you run around to the top and drop a pulley down so it's tied to a Buick or something where it's not going to fall. But you don't do it. You do it as you go, right?
Yeah, you do it as you go, because the cliff is so big. There's really the amount of rope and the weight of the rope it would take to really do something to move equipment, lower it down. It would be just, it's not practical. What people have done, and especially more remote peaks and in El Cap, they shouldn't. It's very dangerous. But people have created little parachute. One of the most difficult things is once you get to the top, then you got this big bag of equipment, and you've got to drag it all the way back down to the base, right? So in more remote mountain climbing locations, on occasion, people have used like little mini parachutes and thrown their equipment bags off and let them parachute down, which is nothing. I don't. That seems it's a good way to lose your equipment. Plus, if anybody's below you, it's really unsafe. So I've never done that. But it's just kind of like that same thing. The code: you pack it up, you pack it out, take it to the top. You got it all the way to the top. You can get it down. It's just it's being tired. It's no excuse. So.
Yeah, that's just so amazing. Like, I've never been in a place where I like the word parachute and how am I going to get my gear back come into it. Those are crazy cliffs. All right. Well, it's just to me, you're such a fascinating guy because it's very hard to get you to brag, but we start hearing between the lines. Do we realize this is some crazy, stupid stuff? You're in a cliff that's so big, a rope can't go to the bottom. That's what you just said.
Pretty much. I think they have, I don't know if they've ever made a single piece of cord that goes, I've heard of like 600 feet long lines. I mean, the rescue teams have some pretty big coils of things they can bring in with helicopters and different equipment. I don't know that they've ever had a single rope that goes the whole way though. That's pretty, it's almost, let's say over 3,000 feet tall. A lot of the faces on El Cap. So it's just, and the average rope is 200 feet long, so it's, yeah.
So how big is that? How much weight are you carrying up the mountain?
It depends on style. So in the weight, like, so the most extreme example of that is Alex Honnold, where he's only got a chalk bag and his shoes on. He's like literally has no equipment. Then from there, you can, like this Emily Harrington, I think is her name, this gal that just got a lot of press about 2 weeks ago. She free climbed with it, which means she used a rope. But she was the first woman to free climb this route on El Capitan in 24 hours or less. I think she did it in 22 hours. So in her situation, they're going in one push, so they don't need sleeping bags. They don't need a bunch of food. They don't need all the water. They're not going to bring any equipment for maybe a toilet paper or something in case of an emergency, but they're not planning on going to the bathroom up there, most likely. I mean, a lot of heavy-duty equipment and logistics that I would need versus how they approach that. Huge difference. So she's probably carrying like 25 pounds or something worth of gear, going very light, 30 pounds or something. We had around 200 pounds of equipment. So, and what you got, because you're bringing all your water, and the particular route we did was so difficult on the climbing level, we needed a lot of extra heavy duty, like old fashioned pitons and stuff, and these modern versions of them that are really thin. So a lot of super specialized equipment that's you only use on really difficult aid climbs where you're putting the equipment in the wall and you're hanging on it. So it's quite the opposite of what that guy was doing and what Alex Honnold was doing, where they're free climbing. We were aid climbing, so we're using the equipment and pulling on it, which means we need a lot more equipment to begin with. And we were up there for a lot more days. So we planned for 14 days. That's how much food and water we took on the climb, and what the estimate that we thought it would take us to get to the top of the wall. So that just takes 14 days versus 1 day. So just in supplies alone is a significant difference. Plus all the camping gear. But that's what I like. I mean, the reason I like big wall climbing is I like living up there, and the camping part at the end of the day when you're getting to hang out on the Pulley Ledge and be in this really amazing space, and that not many people get to go. It's just, this really feels amazing. So that's why I like to do it. So I have done faster climbs where you do go in one push in 20 hours or whatever, and it can be very rewarding as well. But I like being out there and being in it for longer.
Well, I definitely want to ask you about the Pulley Ledge and the camping. But first, when you got 200 pounds, did you sneak a couple things that maybe you didn't really need but you wanted? Was there like that?
Oh yeah, you did that.
Like what?
Totally with big wall climbing. That's kind of like the ethic once you get, it's tricky though. So you get to a point where you're like, well, we might as well bring it. Anything you want, right? So you bring a Bluetooth speaker now, and we bring stuff, that just luxurious items that you wouldn't normally bring if you're going fast and light, is what we say. But the problem is that's still, like when my son and I did the climb last year in 2019, I had that, he didn't know. He's looking to Dad. He's like, what do we bring? What do we not bring? Like, pretty much, if you want to bring it, let's bring it. So we had all kinds of stuff, plenty of like extra food, extra water. But then then you got to pack the crap up to the base of the wall, right? And then drag up the wall. It's like, okay, it does add up. And, there's definitely a margin of overdoing it, I guess you'd say. So, it wasn't that I regretted bringing any core specifics, but there's certain things I remember we unpacking, like, oh, we didn't even use this. Like, so you can definitely overdo it.
So what was the most frivolous thing you took?
I can't think of anything. I can't remember specifically off the top of my head what, probably stuff like a toolkit to fix gear. Like I have a little kit that there's things you might need, but you don't always need them. Maybe, but you don't know that they're frivolous until. So I wouldn't really call that frivolous. I know we had a lot, extra food and water, so we probably could have done with less. That's part of the reason. So it's interesting. So we knew we had a bunch of food and water, so then we just moved. It caused us to move slower, and we were okay with moving slower because we enjoyed the environment. So I said, he loves sleeping on the wall, so we had slept an extra night in this really wonderful camping, this little ledge at the base of the wall, and at the top of the route is like this most amazing place you could ever sleep in your life. And if you like sleeping in a really airy perch, there's like this little 5 foot by 4 foot ledge, and if you drop something off the front of this ledge, it's not hitting anything till it hits the ground. I mean, it's complete air to the ground.
So this is a item you take that makes a ledge. It's like a
no. This was actually good. This gets confusing. So in this case, on this route, there were natural ledges on the wall built in by God or whoever. It was the ledge was there. So natural ledges, as we would call them, versus the route I did with my buddy Rich on El Cap. There were almost no ledges at all because the route's so steep. And so we brought our own ledge. The Leaning Tower is really steep too. It's the weirdest thing ever. For whatever reason, this thing is even steeper than El Cap. And it's, literally overhangs like almost that much in places, but there's these ledges that are in cut in the wall. And so it makes this really crazy little perches you can hang out and sleep on. And they're pretty level too.
But it's inclined. So if you sit on it, you kind of have to lean over, right?
It's almost like if you're sitting.
How wide?
What were you going to say?
Like, can you walk around on these things, or no? There's no room.
It's on ledge. So we slept on 4 different ledges on the one route. The first one was rocky and it was kind of pointing down. It wasn't that great of a place to sleep. The second one's amazing. It's called the Iwani Ledge. It's a famous place to sleep in Yosemite. It holds 4 people packed in. So you can walk around a little bit, but you want to have your rope. I do. I'm always tied in so that I'm not going to walk around a ledge like that and slip, which people have done and fall you can get lured into a false sense of security. If you're up, if you're doing it a whole lot, kind of like the same way we do with driving. When we first start driving, we're paying attention, and then in a year or so, we're just doing our everything, driving down the road, not paying attention. So it's a little tricky. But you can walk around. Some of them are big enough to walk around on. The one we slept on the very top was really nice and big enough that we could walk around on with rope. For me, I wanted to be tied in the whole time.
And the ones where you carry your own ledge, is that like a hammock or what? I can't picture what that is.
Yeah, so I wish I can see my laptop. I can maybe fire my laptop up and show a photo. But if you Google Pulley Ledge, it's basically a nylon cot. It's got an aluminum frame, and there's suspension that comes up. It looks like a hanging bed, basically. And it's a flat bed with a nylon fabric, and it's about 4 foot by 6 foot or so. It's not very big, so just enough room for 2 people to sleep head to toe.
I'm just trying to picture myself in that Manley, thinking, okay, time to go to sleep. Wait, I wonder if that anchor is in right. I wonder, what if I roll over?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why, that's not if you, so procedurally, when you're doing the work itself, you maintain the level of quality. You don't skimp or half-ass it, right? So it's just not the place to skimp on quality, right? So I'm so obsessive about that when I'm actually executing and building the system to protect myself, and I triple check it right then, and I'll check it again before I go to bed or whatever, so that hopefully I've done that well enough and focused enough, and I've double checked it. And if you ever had any, it'd not be fun if you were OCD, because I think you could be up all night checking the anchor, right? But I do it at such a level of focus and that I'm confident that even if the thought pops up, because our mind's always working to protect us, right? So it's like it's gonna freak out or ask the question. And I just remind myself that, no, it's good, or I'll check it again if I really need to. But I never had to get up in the middle of the night and check the anchor, because I've done that before I went to bed, before I laid down.
And do you sleep as well up there as you do on the ground? Or because I'd be just so aware of I'm hanging off of a cliff.
Yeah, it's a challenge at times. It depends. 2 things. There's all these competing factors that really mess with you. One is in your brain. A great book, by the way, a recommendation, a book called by Matthew Walker on sleep, and I saw this podcast interview with he and Joe Rogan, and interesting. Right in the opening of the podcast, Rogan says, "How did you sleep last night?" And he said, "No, not very well, because I was at a hotel." And Rogan's like, "Oh, well, tell me more." So he talks about how that the reason most people, the first night or 2 or 3 in a hotel room, your brain, our brain does not allow us to completely go out to sleep and check out completely. So your brain is actually worried about threats. It's like you're sleeping out on the savannah, and as a caveman, and your brain's wired and it knows this is not my normal home. It's not my cave, and your brain's constantly trying to worry about protecting you. So I think there's a part of it's it's gonna keep you from getting as good as sleep. I actually monitored my sleep with my ring that I've told you about, my Aura ring, on that climb. It was better than you would expect, because the flip side is you're physically completely destroying yourself. So you're putting out way more physical energy than you normally ever would in a workout or anything. So, and that it helps offset that some. And for the most part, I sleep pretty well, especially considering how weird, how unnatural it is, and how potentially dangerous the situation is. So you build great anchors, you wear yourself out, and then also such a simple thing, but controlling my caffeine intake towards in the afternoon, as an example. When I used to not climb with caffeine at all, and then the goo energy gels and all that stuff came about. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can go all day. You keep eating caffeinated, energy products, and then you lay down to go to sleep, and you're wired. So sleep's a whole issue for me anyway. So
Pete has a good question. Longest period of time you've had to pause for inclement weather? Because if it would be, I'd be like, let's just go home. But I'm guessing
that's a great
work that way.
Yeah, and it depends on the scenario. I don't think, let me think back here. I've never been, I should say never, on big wall climbing, I've not had, a lot of my partners have had this happen, but I've never had a situation where I was pinned down in a storm and I had to wait it out for days and ration food and then finish the climb on a big wall climb. I've climbed through bad weather and just keep climbing, but I've never had to stay still. What I have had happen is in Kyrgyzstan on a big wall expedition, and in Nepal, really more Kyrgyzstan. It was just waiting out bad weather on the ground. So like waiting for a good weather window to pop up. And same in Yosemite. I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, months literally in Yosemite waiting for, I used to go in May all the time, and May is just rainy. I don't know. I try not to go in May anymore for big wall climbs because it's just too wet. But that's why fortunately, I've mostly been on the ground. So I've probably had, 2 weeks or more waiting for a good weather window in a climbing area, but on the ground, still it's kind of miserable, but it's not nearly as miserable when you're hanging out in the exposed. Even if you've got a tent fly, you're still going to get wet and damp and cold, and so I've felt all those things, but never in a severe enough condition where I couldn't move, for days. So.
It sounds so awesome. All right, let me
sounds so awesome.
Let me ask you a few like rapid fire questions. Pete, that was a good question about the weather, by the way. Thank you. So the rule here is no thinking. Got it?
Okay, I'll try to play by the rules.
What was the dumbest thing you did on a mountain, on a climb?
The dumbest thing I probably ever did on a climb was one of my first dates with Emily. I didn't have very much experience. We'd been dating for about 2 weeks, and it was this really, I have to kind of explain that it's this really cool cliff. You go to the top of this cliff in Kentucky, and halfway down the face, there's a hole in the side of the cliff. And there's 2 ways into the hole. One, you can rappel down from the top, which I thought would be really cool. The other way is you can hike down through this cave basically, and it pops into this room inside the cliff, and there's a hole out to the outside, so it's kind of like a cave inside the cliff. Really cool. So it was snowing, it was cold, it was February. And I said, you hike through this thing and use your flashlight, and eventually you're going to get to this tunnel. I think I showed her the way, and I'm going to go back at the top and rappel back down because I thought it'd be cool mostly. So anyway, I rappelled down off the top in the dark, which this could be okay. Exactly, you got to know exactly where the ropes aligned over top of the little tunnel I was trying to hit, and it wasn't. So that was pretty stupid. So not only what's worse is I realized I was way to the right once I started rappelling down, and I tried to tie the rope off and then climb with the backpack on, try to climb across to the cave where she was, and a hole broke, and I took this huge swinging fall and smacked into this side of this thing and lowered myself down to this. I rescued myself out of it, and she helped me, but that was the dumbest thing I think I've ever done. So,
did you
lack of experience
in the dark?
Yeah, it was the dark. It wasn't at first, but it got dark because it was winter and just ran out of time. And I had a flashlight, but still, it was just, lots and lots of mistakes. And I look back on it, it was not the smartest,
Honey,
outing.
I think we're meant for each other. Now you take this flashlight and hike through the cave all by yourself, and I'll hang it down and look through, and we'll wave.
So what's funny about something like that is like, that an event like something that's that intense and stressful, and because it really freaked her out. So she basically she rescued me because she had to retie the rope, but she didn't really know how to tie a knot. So she just she tied a bunch of knots, and then it's kind of crazy. It was totally safe by the time we were done, but I don't know what it is. That night, this is either going to you're never going to see the person again, or B, you're going to realize that you care a lot about each other. And fortunately, with B, we realized that we were falling in love, and it was an intensely scary situation. So, but it pulled us closer together. Fortunately, so she's still with me too.
At the hole, hearing you scream, ah!
Yeah. Well, she got to see it too. She's hanging out there looking at me and seeing how I'm getting closer. Like, I think he's going to make it over. I was almost to the spot where she was, and I had to climb down. And never climbed on this wall, by the way. And it's not a normal climbing route at all, which is probably why the thing that I was hanging on, the hold broke off and sent me flying through the air. Yeah. So she got to see me scream and flashlight fly out of sight. I've never told this story though in the public domain, so it's kind of funny that it's coming out.
I don't know why I'm laughing because I'm just horrified.
It was horrific, but I'm not offended that you're laughing. It's funny. It's funny now, right?
This whole language is so non-normal for most of us muggles, I think, to say, "Oh yeah, if you don't tie your knot right, you kill yourself," and it's a cliff. You could get used to it and fall off a cliff. And
that's the thing I'm trying to figure out in my work. I mean, it demands a level of presence that we just don't have to have in our day-to-day work. So that's I'm still trying to figure out how to reverse engineer that and help make that really applicable for people in our day-to-day life, including myself. How do I become more focused and more present in my day-to-day work? I know the answer to that is, I know it has a lot to do with mindfulness and meditation, and that's part of the program. But anyway, trying to figure that out for a business audience one day to, I don't know,
The fact that you ask yourself that kind of questions is one of the reasons I like you. Rapid fire. What are you watching on Netflix right now that is, don't tell me a self-help thing. Tell me something fun.
Yeah, it's the only thing I'm watching. I'm not. By the way, I'm not. It's weird. I've not read a whole lot of books this year. Usually, I'm obsessed about self improvement and reading and podcasts and everything. And I really haven't done much of that this year. But I've been watching Shameless on Netflix.
Okay, that's trashy.
It's trashy as it can be, and it's like so that's our guilty pleasure. We're in season 9 now, but it's gonna. I guess you're debuting season 11 coming up any day. So I'm already kind of bummed. Like, oh. Man.
All right. Tell me. Let's pretend there's no pandemic on. Describe a perfect night out. Like Manley, tonight's perfect. You get to do this. What does it look like?
Yeah, that's easy. I'd go out and hear live music. And that could be, Red Rocks Amphitheater for us, like down in Denver, or it could be at a local little one of the funnest nights in Boulder last year. I got to saw this little trio jazz band right over there by the university, just total hole in the wall of 5 people sitting in there, just delighted. Great, go out, get a great meal, go out, hear some really great live music. Right. Well, that's the perfect night out.
That sets up the next question. Manley, good news. You get to have, you're going to go sit in the front row of your favorite band. Which band are we talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what came to mind, even though it's not possible now. It would have been to see Eddie Van Halen one more time. And so Eddie, as most of you know, hopefully you've not been living under a rock. We lost the great Eddie Van Halen this year, and he was the reason I started playing guitar. Oh. So that's not possible. So, but there's a ton of people I'd love to see front row.
But I like that. We're going with magic. Reality does not matter. How about this? If I say you're going to a concert tonight, and you say, "Oh no, it's the worst concert ever," what does that look like? What would be something you just do not want to go to?
I am, and this is going to offend probably 70% of the audience, including my sister-in-law, who's in country music industry. I don't like country music, and I know it's like saying that you don't like apple pie or something. I know it's not popular to say that. I've never loved country music. Some country now I've really enjoyed. I love Willie Nelson. There's certain collaborations and stuff out there that I think are really great. Old country, Johnny Cash. But yeah, modern country has never been a big thing for me. So I'm going to go to a country concert. Sorry, people.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
Favorite sport to watch is the Cardinals play baseball, specifically St. Louis Cardinals. I got really hooked on the Cardinals when I was living in St. Louis. So now I got to start watching the Rockies, and I'm probably going to need to become a Broncos fan too, right? That's
Manly. We're glad you're in Colorado. Favorite sport to do that's not climbing?
Tennis. I got kind of back. I used to play tennis when I was a kid, 6th grade, and then 30 years went by, and I picked up a tennis racket again about 3 or 4 years ago. That said, I haven't played in like another year or two now. So, but yeah, traditional sport, tennis is one of my favorites.
If we get in your car
I'm not biking, kayaking, canoeing. I forgot about the more adventure, skiing. Right. So I thought when you said no climbing, I was like non-mountain, traditional.
If we get in your car right now and the stereo comes on, what are we listening to?
We're listening to some funky fusion, jazz, reggae, jam band kind of stuff.
All right. So not a podcast, not a book on tape. Music?
Not right now. Usually I do listen to a ton of podcasts and Audible books. Tim Ferriss. I used to listen to Tim Ferriss podcasts a lot. The Rich Roll podcast I got into for a while. But I'm not been as much into which is weird. Normally I know a lot of friends are like totally, eating up self-development courses and stuff right now. And I've just been it's weird. I'm kind of burned out on everything like that for a little while, just taking a break on it.
My dad, Manley, told me a story. I asked him how he was doing, and my dad's a really talented musician. And he was just saying he was in the car, and one of his favorite operas came on, and the soprano hit this high note. And he's telling me the story, and he said, I laughed, and it felt so good. Just cheered me up to hit this woman hit that note. And that made a mark in a good way, because I think, sometimes we mistake, I gotta do self-improvement. I gotta learn. A podcast will teach us. I'll do that book on tape, and maybe we're most healthy to just listen to the music and let our brains do whatever our brains do.
Yeah, Did you get a chance to watch that little video clip I sent you earlier?
I did see it.
Yeah, so that's that. So this I got 5 Bullet Friday from Tim Ferriss is where I got this, and it's a clip from he interviewing a guy named Derek Sievers, I think. But Derek and he's a total, like, the guy CD Baby, I think was his company, millionaire investor out of Silicon Valley, very successful guy. But he was talking about how he used to do this bike ride up Santa Monica or something, like as hard as you could go, and he'd make it in 43 minutes, right? And it became this stressful thing. And it really rang with me, because I know you've encouraged me like this, like, right? Like, what if, because my whole life I've been just like, oh, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it at this really high level and obsess about all this extra detail. But he basically got 40. He was going in 43 minutes as fast as he could go, and then he went and enjoyed himself and looked around. And he looked at his time, and he finished. It was 45 minutes. He's like, wow, I had so much more fun, enjoyed it so much more, and I just lost 2 minutes. And he says, if I'm in competition or something, of course this would matter. But he's like, what if especially of our obsessive types, whatever you put in all this extra energy and it's creating extra stress and resistance, I don't know. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and flip the script on myself and say, what if, is that extra? It's not always worth it. You don't get, sometimes it is, but I think we need to be more discerning on where we put that extra percentage in all the time. So I'm just really thinking about that.
You and I have talked about this concept at length, because we're entrepreneurs, and with entrepreneurs, you have unlimited amount of work you could do to push your business forward. And it doesn't always work, but you have unlimited amount of work you could do. And you got to find a way you have to find the answer of how much work you're willing to do or should do or will benefit from, and is it really worth the extra effort?
Yeah, and for me, there's this question of how much work. What can I consistently put out as far as productivity and just focus and go for how long? How sustainable is that, right? So for me, I hit a physical, about 3 years ago, actually, I hit a physical, this, a lot of people, friends, that I started having physical challenges with my energy level, and not, I just kind of physically burning myself out. And so for me, that's a question too, is like, what's sustainable? It's no good if I can't live till, many, many more years. So, and I think the pace at which I was going, and not just in my speaking career, but it's been one thing after another, right? As a kid and getting into climbing, and then all my jobs, all my careers, and it's just always been at such an intense level. I don't know if I can do that forever. I think I can still do a really high level and really be impressed and serve people in a way that is more sustainable. It's a short version. So, that's like, then you're trying to rewire a whole psychology of like how the human, it's not easy to just flip the switch. Oh, I want to change this about myself. It's like 47 years of 48 years of conditioning, it's all. So I have a psychology degree, so I'm having to, I don't know, from all my skills and resources, try to rebuild myself in a more sustainable way.
This is not an insult, but you are an intense guy.
Thank you. I've heard that before too, which is some people said, yeah, you have this weird, like, you're intense, but you're super laid back and super loving, but super, like, I don't know, it's a weird mix. So cool. Thank you. I think that's a good thing, I guess.
It is a good thing, but also I see where it hinders you, because it's very hard for you to sit back and say, like, no, I'm just listening to music. I'm not.
Yeah. And even like the music thing, it's like, I don't know. So there's this loop around, I don't know. I'm sort of, in some ways I feel a bit numb to things like your dad. I really related to your dad having this a situation or scenario with the car. I could feel like dopamine, serotonin, like super amped up, and you feel euphoria, right? I could feel a response to certain musics or other things, being on stage, climbing, we feel great, right? And you feel good. And, I'm not having that response to my environment as much anymore, especially with the pandemic. And I think that's my nervous system trying to reel things back. And it's like, okay, because things are so intense. I think it's just self-protection mechanism, but I don't like it. I want to feel, but that's a whole nother hour conversation. Just where I am, just being transparent. That's kind of where I'm at in my life and what I'm trying to figure out here is,
it's funny because, we're running out of time, but we should have started here, because although it always works like this, Manley, whenever I have these interviews, we really get to it after like 45 minutes. But to me, what makes you so interesting is that interesting personal conflict between like you can't be an elite mountain climber and go Nepal and climb mountains that, like as you said, you hang the rope down and you're, you're hanging in space. You can't do that unless you're intense. You can't be an elite professional speaker as you are unless you have some intensity. But that has a cost. It's hard to be that person.
It's you're right. There's a cost to it, and that's something I don't think I didn't see it and feel it, in the last few years. But yeah, there's a cost there. So I don't know. That's a part of the discomfort is because I want to do things at a really high level, just for a lot of reasons. But so the concern is in like how much can I dial it back, but still be impactful and serve people, So that's why that video that that we were talking about really just got, there's something to that, definitely. Yeah. For people who are really pushing it, and then there's people. I mean, there's people that are just if they're honest with themselves, they're like, no, I don't have that problem. I'm slacking. I need to push it up. And I think a lot of people in that camp too. So, and no disrespect, by the way. I don't, I used to, maybe when I was 20, I thought you had to be pushing it to. Now I'm like, whatever, I want to encourage people, inspire them to reach more of their potential. But I don't know. I'm trying not to be like overly zealous about it,
Well, I think that's part of growing up, right? When you were a younger adult, you're like, let's go do it. It's in a different country. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. It's dangerous. Heck yeah. Safer than a car. And now as you age, you're like, you got some kids and you got a life, and the balance is harder. It's not as black and white, right?
Yeah, and that's part, something that my risk tolerance is because of having kids, and then that's definitely shifted over the years. There's no way I would, I wouldn't have done the climb, and I wrote my book and my signature keynote focuses on the climb in Kyrgyzstan with the Russians. I would not do that today. And I wouldn't even go into that region, by the way. It's just really politically unstable, but things change over time, and you become but the cool thing is I have that skill set and that experience. So now I can go do really dialed down and much more, safer, as an example. Like the climb I did with my son was, really most of the variables are well within our control versus climbing halfway around the world. So I'm able to apply that in a safer context and have meaningful experiences. And then like we went skiing the other day, a couple of days and since this year, and just being out, I don't know, you don't have to be pushing it, and you can still have meaningful experiences and be in the outdoors and deepen those relationships without it being risky or crazy,
I want to wrap things up because I don't want to take advantage of you. The last question.
Man. We can keep going if you want. I'm open to that.
You're a nice guy. The last question, I'll just warn you right now. I'm going to ask you about hope. What gives you hope?
Okay.
But I wanted to ask you about being a motivational speaker. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase that. Do you think motivational speaker for you is a job title, or is it a personality type?
Well, I think it's kind of both. It's a job title in the sense that that's kind of, from a person organizing a meeting, if they have a slot where they do that kind of thing, then it makes sense in that context. And then, I think there's certain personality types that wouldn't. My meditation coach, he's been pointing this out a lot lately. It's like your gift is you're enthusiastic about things, and that's what people love. Like when you talk about something that you're excited about, that enthusiasm bleeds over, and they feel that, and then you make it relevant. So I think there's part of that. I haven't met any effective motivational or speakers or leadership speakers who are real negative or pessimistic. A couple that are jerks, not many. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think it is I think it's both.
Well, there are, right? Well, because I'll tell you the answer for me about you. I think it's your personality type, and then also I'm not trying to take away from the fact there are tactics and skills to run the business of being a motivational speaker, and tactics and skills to stand on a stage and deliver a message that's meaningful and entertaining to watch. But you were you're just so authentic. You're almost unbelievable in a very good way. Meaning, the guy we're seeing right now, Manley, is the real guy. You're like, I just want to be of service. I just like to help people. I always want to better myself. That for you is not fake at all. And, that's why I think for you, being a motivational speaker is a personality. And then, oh, yeah, I can make a business out of it. You're the right guy in the right job, dude.
Thanks. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's what I'm trying to reconnect with this, what I'm going to say at a deeper emotional level. And when I say deeper emotional level, I mean me feeling an emotional response to it. Here's my analysis of all this too, because I'm trying to, there's some things that aren't as, when I first started the full-time gig, when I decided to go full-time, it was just incredibly, and that burning desire and that motivation was so on fire for me. And it's still there, no question, but I don't feel the neurochemistry from it as much. And so it's sort of, I'm missing that, and I want that back. Or maybe I need to learn maybe some more mature level of an engagement in your career and in your calling that you find a way to do that without the dopamine hit or whatever it is that got you fired up. And maybe that's what I need to let go of chasing that and just embrace this is how it's going to be. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out because I do whatever it is. I just wanted to affect my ability to help other people and earn a good living for my family. Right. So.
Well, that you're talking about that, the hit of dopamine of your job. I don't know about you, but for me, that science has changed with virtual.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different energy preparing for delivering, and then after the virtual event, when you when you walk, I was there when you walk off stage, people want to take selfies with you and they want to shake your hand. And then I also know what it's like doing virtual events where when you're done, you just log off.
Yeah, it's the good news is that I think it's definitely not the same as in person, but people are getting value out of what we're delivering, whether it's a small team event or a keynote, because I've heard just a lot of good feedback. So people are getting value out of it. But I think for us, yeah, it's hard. So I'm trying to let go of that. That's another, that's been really hard. I'm just kind of getting used to it, but I still don't like it. I miss that. You miss that you hang up, like we're going to hang up. I'm riding high with one of my very best friends, enjoy being with you. And then when we hang up, it's like, I'm going to be sitting in this really nice little room, but I'm all alone. It's different. Yeah, it's a weird time. I mean, I think everybody, even if you're working from home and you're doing Zoom meetings all day, and I don't know, I think that's worse. I hear these people having to sit on Zoom, we're on Zoom a lot, but like an office person working from home that some are expected to be FaceTime the whole day, talking about screen fatigue.
It's hard. I was talking yesterday to a buddy of mine who's a teacher, and he's on Zoom all day long, and he's just exhausted. Dude, what? The rules for this are there are no rules. I'm going to ask you about hope. You could be, I don't know if it's hope for your own self and your family, or hope for your job, or hope for something to do with climbing or the planet, but as you define it, what gives you hope?
Love gives me hope. And what I mean by that is that just like you, our colleagues and friends, my family, my immediate family, my relatives, and audience members, past people that I've worked with, and just feeling the love from people, knowing that humans, I do think that what gives me hope is love, and that specifically that humans love's going to win. It takes time sometimes, and we're in such a weird place, but I just, even for people like, let's say, not even to get into politics, but like people who are politically just really upset, let's say an example, someone who's upset about the election right now, it's just everybody's in such a weird space. I do think we're going to overcome all of that. I don't think everybody's going to be happy-go-lucky and all that, but I think what's going to give me hope is what gives me hope specifically too, is just some real practical things like the vaccines coming, and collectively, I think that life being crappy in a lot of ways for people makes everything more amplified, right? So including politics, and I think that when we I think there's going to be a little period of time between what's the crap we're in now and then normal way down the road. There's going to be, I think, a magical little moment in between where we haven't forgotten all that we learned and the pain of going through this, and we operate a little differently. Hopefully we're a little bit kinder and a little bit more open and more loving to each other before we fall back into our own little silos and bubbles of, focus on ourselves and just our immediate people. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's what came to mind.
That was exactly what I was looking for. A plus. What gives
Cool.
you hope? Love. Manley
Yeah.
Feinberg the second. You are available at verticallessons.com. Any
Yeah.
organization would be crazy not to hire you. Hire him. And if you can't find him, if he's booked up, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
You're welcome, Brad. Thanks for having me on your show, man. I appreciate you.
I'm grateful. Hold with me, Manley, and we're going to sign out. Thanks, everybody.